Your invitation number is 436 if you would like to have your hymnals open, maybe nearby, so we can just smoothly go into that. I will make a promise to you. This message this morning is actually the conclusion of last Sunday's message, but I promise I will not preach last Sunday's message all over again. But this is from Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah chapter 6. You're sitting in your easy chair and your wife comes into the room. She comes into the room and she says, "What do you think about my new dress?" You start to speak and you bite your tongue. Then she turns around and she says, "Does it make me too wide in back?" You start to speak and you do what? You bite your tongue. What do we mean by bite your tongue? It's an English idiom that means you keep yourself quiet and you don't say what you want to say. But sometimes if you don't say something, it's a sin. It's a sin not to tell the truth, is it not? Jesus said to us, as recorded in Matthew 12:36, "I say to you that for every idle word men may speak, they will give account of it in the day of judgment." Now that used to really bother me. That in the time of judgment, you will be judged for every idle word that you speak. Now, other modern translations, this was from the New King James, from other modern translations, it would say, for every careless word, you will give an account. But I wonder if an idle word might also be the word that you don't speak. I used to really worry about that verse. Because as you might relate to you, I say a lot of idle words, don't you? Words that really don't mean anything, words that really don't carry any effect, words that don't do any good, silly stuff, silly talk. But an idle word might be that word that you have to give that you do not give, the word that you do not say. Isaiah had a word to give, and he did not bite his tongue. In the year that King Uzziah died, chapter 6, saw the Lord sitting on the throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above it stood seraphim, one with 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, with 2 he flew, and one cried to another and said, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole world is full of his glory." The posts of the doors were shaken by the voice of him who cried out, and the house was filled with smoke. So I said, "Oh, woe is me, I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of unclean people. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a live coal, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth with it and said, "Behold, this touched your lips, your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is purged. And I also heard the voice of the Lord say, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? Then I, Isaiah, then I said, here am I, send me. And he said, go and tell this people. Keep on hearing, but you do not understand. Keep on seeing, but you do not perceive. Make the heart of this people dull, their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart and return and be healed. And I said, Lord, how long? And he answered, until the cities are laid waste without inhabitant. The houses are without a man. The land is utterly desolate. The Lord has removed men far away, and the forsaken places are many in the midst of the land. But a tenth of it will be in it, and will return and be for consuming, as a terebinth tree or as an oak, whose stump remains when it is cut down. So the holy seed shall be its stump. Isaiah. Proverbs 29:18 says this, that where there is no vision, the people will perish. Someday, another day, we'll take a Sunday morning and we'll take that verse and we'll talk about the vision you might have for this church, or the vision for this community, or vision for your family, or maybe your vision for your own life. We'll talk about that. But the Bible says if you don't have a vision, people will perish. Isaiah had a vision. And we'll read about that. Now there are some people in the Bible that bit their tongue. They did not tell, or did not want to tell. Jonah. The Old Testament was told to go to Nineveh and preach to the people. And in essence he said, I won't go. I'm not going. I'm going the other way. I'm going to run away. Well, eventually he went. But at first he bit his tongue. Moses, called of God to deliver the people from Egypt. And what does he say at the very beginning? Oh, no, God, please send someone else. Jeremiah, the prophet, 100 years after Isaiah. He's called of God. And he says, oh, but God, you want me to go and tell? I'm too young. I'm just a child. He bit his tongue. But eventually he went. Isaiah is called of God to go and tell what he has seen, what he has experienced, that God is on his throne. No matter how bad the world seems to be, God is on his throne. He is sovereign. He still rules. He still reigns. He will have his way. Go tell that message. Isaiah had a vision of the holiness and the reign of God, and he did not bite his tongue. He had a vision of his own sinfulness and of the sinfulness of the world around him. He knew what sin had done to him, that had ruined him. He knew that sin was ruining the world. He had a vision of what sin can do, the awfulness of it. And he did not bite his tongue. He went and told. And he had a vision of how God forgives and how he cleanses and how he touches us and purges us, expels that evil and that wickedness from us. He had a vision of God on his throne. He had a vision of his own sinfulness of the world, and he had a vision of how God can truly forgive and help and save. And because he had that vision, he went and he told. We have a story to tell. That story has been told in this very building here for well over 100 years. That story has been told by your grandparents and your parents and your forebears. And that story has been told that God is on his throne, that we as sinners are ruining ourselves and the community, and yet God will forgive, and he will save, he will cleanse. We have that story to tell. We bite not our tongue because we know that God rules as judge. That one day all humanity must stand before him and give an account and be judged. We know that death comes to every person, and after death there is the judgment. And we know that there's no more chance after that. We stand or if we fall by the life that we live. We have that vision. We know what sin has done to us. I don't talk about what sin has done and is still sometimes doing to me. I've heard evangelists in revivals, they'll tell their testimony and they're sincere, they mean it well, but sometimes they talk about how awful and sinful and wicked they were. It almost sounds like they're bragging about it. I don't want to talk about what I used to be. I wish I could forget it, but I can't. It's still there. Things in my boyhood, my childhood, my adolescence, and as a grown man, and sometimes as much as recently as yesterday or today. I don't want to talk about that. But we have a vision that he forgives us. He wipes it away. He makes the slate clean. He gives us a new start. He changes us from the inside and out. And we know that, and that is what we must tell everyone every day. You don't have to walk around with the Bible in your hand and preach to them as we think of preaching from a pulpit. But you tell it in the way you live it. You tell it in the way you show it. You tell it in the love that you give. I'm not much, I'm nothing, but God has made me into something. And God can do that for you and for everyone. He says, how long do I have to do this? Some of you may be saying, well, how long is this going to be? No, how long do I have to tell? How long do I have to keep telling? And God gives the answer. He says to Isaiah said, they're not going to listen to you. They're not going to pay attention to you. You're going to be a complete failure as far as any success. But God does not call us to be successful. He calls us to be faithful. You may never win that person to Christ. You may never change that person in your household. You may never be able to bring about the redemption of the person that you work with, that you just can't stand the way they live. It doesn't matter. They won't listen to you, but God has called us to not bite the tongue, but to tell, to tell, to tell, to show, to show, to show. And God said to Isaiah, I'll tell you how long as there's anyone left. Isaiah has a 40-year ministry. And he is told by God, as long as there's anybody left in the land, you keep telling the story, whether they'll listen or not. The responsibility is not yours as to how they respond. That's their responsibility. Your responsibility, my responsibility, the responsibility of this place is to keep telling. That's all we can do. Keep telling. Though none will listen to you, you keep telling. As long as there's anyone left alive, you keep telling. I'm not big on deathbed confessions, deathbed salvations, but it's possible. I don't know if I ever experienced one, really, as far as witnessing to people having accepted Christ. But the thief on the cross that turned to Jesus was saved in that very same day, in the hours of his death. You never know. As long as there's breath in their life, you keep telling. You do not judge them. You do not condemn them. You do not try to make up your mind whether they're saved or unsaved, whether they're going to heaven or to hell. You don't do that. You just keep telling. As long as there's breath, as long as there's someone there, you keep telling. And then God says this, when you're all done with it, and it looks like you've completely failed. The old tree falls down and is burned, but there's a stump there. And out of that stump, you all cut down that great, big, beautiful pecan tree that I one year made $200 off, and I wish you hadn't cut it down, but you did, because you thought it was going to fall over all the parsonage. I know that. You cut it down, but guess what? It's coming back. And I guess I'll have to wait 80, 90 more years before I get any pecans off of it, but it comes back. And as long as there's anyone left, you keep telling it, and God always has a remnant. He always has some people left. It's never a total disaster. So, don't let the world intimidate you. Don't let other people shut you up. Don't let others shut you down. Just keep loving, keep showing, keep telling, keep believing, keep trusting, keep faithful. Don't bite your tongue. But tell the old story. Is he leading you to do that? Is he leading you to do that with his church? Is he leading you to do that in your family?